Turn on. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this Friday. I appreciate you giving us your time. My name is Nate Angelo Mock, and you are joining us for our Askable Adult and how to be an Askable Adult training. Thank you. This is our first time doing it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But first, if you're not familiar with us, like I said, I'm Renee Angelo Mock, and we are Mentor Maryland, DC, your regional affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. So the National Mentoring Partnership is our leading partner of the mentoring movement, and we are one of 26 affiliates, and our goal is to ensure that mentoring is a legislative priority, a movement across the USA to ensure that mentoring is of the utmost importance, and we're focused on ensuring that our young people have caring adults in their lives. So we've been in Maryland since 2018 and formerly in DC since last year. And we, again, are focused on closing the mentoring gap and increasing quality and quantity of mentoring relationships across Maryland and DC. So that is our role, and we do that in a variety of ways. So like I said, we're affiliated with the National Mentoring Partnership, and they do tons of things. And if you're not aware, the National Mentoring Summit is in January and registration is live. We will be there, and we hope that you'll join us. There are going to be tons of cool workshops, of which I'm facilitating one. So you should come. You should come to my workshop. But it is in DC, and yeah, we hope that you'll join us. Another thing that we do, and we're in our new fiscal year of free no-cost technical assistance through the National Mentoring Resource Center, and we're going to be having some new consultants working on delivering our technical assistance. So this is an opportunity for one of our amazing consultants to be working privately, one-on-one with you and your team and your leaders at your organization on whatever is of concern to your mentoring program. So whether that is, bringing on new board members, a recruitment plan, your policies and procedures, your curriculum, whatever you're doing with your students, and getting that, again, that private expert support at no cost to your program. 30, 50 hours over the course of this next year, you can get 1 or 2 or more sessions with our amazing expert consultants. So apply now. These are all links. So when I send out these PDFs, you'll have all the information you need to get that. So yeah, do it. The time is now. Access to the mentoring connectors. This is a national database, and some of my colleagues here at Mentor Maryland DC run our regional database of the mentoring connector, of which you can submit your program to advertise your mentoring opportunities, but also the opportunity for young people to join your program. So when in National Mentoring Month, that's in January, when people are Googling the word mentor, the mentoring connector comes up and they can look for your program, can pop up, and they can see that they can get connected with your program. So that is a really great resource that we want you and your program to be using. Local trainings and virtual trainings like this one. So we do these often, and it's part of our goals and our strategic plans to ensure that you have resources and free resources like this to do your best work, and for your mentors to have access to this kind of knowledge as well. So we want to keep doing these things for you. The promotion of best practices. So the things like the element of effective practice, which again is a research evidence-based tool that the National Mentoring Partnership puts out. So we carry those things on to you. Access to the National Quality Mentoring System. So this again is an evidence quality-based tool put out by the National Mentoring Partnership that we can get to you again through that technical assistance. So it's something you go through with one of our consultants to kind of categorize your program as to how well you're doing, and then they will help you write an improvement plan so you can continue to excel and go up in that system. Connection to funding opportunities. So we ensure that when we come across those funding opportunities, that we share the information out in newsletters. And again, when you're in our network, that we get that information to you. And then helping you get access to starting a program if you are new to the field. And you want to be in touch with our grassroots programs to help you all get started. And again, ensuring that our young people have access to programs because we know that there aren't enough programs to serve our young people across Maryland and DC. So, all right, we're gonna jump right in. Here we go. Okay, the Askable Adult, welcome. The why. So the Askable Adult campaign comes from the Vermont Network, and I kind of happened to come across this and I reached out to them. So this all comes from Vermont. So the Vermont Network, which is associated with their Department of Health, they surveyed a bunch of Vermont young people and to see, like, what were their concerns? What were they worried about? How are they doing? And what really came back about what they were concerned about was that they wanted to be able to communicate with adults. And what about adults? That they were adults that they could ask things, right? To have conversations with, and to ask adults about, for adults to be askable, to be approachable. And as a result, they put together this training so adults could be more prepared and be approachable and to be askable. And that, so as a result of that survey, they put together these training tools, which are publicly available, and they became available throughout Vermont. And now they're publicly available for anyone to use. So I had reached out once I came across it to ask if we could use it. And, they were very happy to share it. And now I'm happy to share it with you all because it applies. And the audience is, adults. And of course, work for mentors and beyond. So I'm happy to share it with you all. And my role in this is not necessarily that I'm, the expert or a youth development. I like to be, of course, and in other roles and trainings, I have expertise about mentoring, but this is really just about youth and adults having conversations and it building connections. So while often I tend to default to mentor-youth relationships, everything we're talking today can really be applied to any adult talking to a young person. So I'm going to try to correct myself and not always default to mentor-youth relationships, because while it seems that most of our audience today is still in defaulting to mentor-youth programs and is from youth programs, this information, which when I follow up with you all, I'll share this with you. And again, this information is publicly downloadable. They did share with me some of the behind the scenes tools and more in-depth tools, but I'll make sure that when I follow up again, this can be a training that you bring back in that you can do with your people and with your mentors or with your parents at your programs. But again, this information is really just between that dynamic of adult and young person, of which we know there is a dynamic there. So this applies to everyone, and I'm really just here to guide you all through the information. So our agenda today is really broken into the 4 sections, of which there are these 4 tools of the campaign. The campaign is to become an Askable Adult. So that's how our agenda will be broken into, and there's activities for all. I'll say this is a very interactive training, and this is my first time doing it. So we'll see, and I'll ask for your patience about our aim for our timing. So this is intended to go to 1:30 p.m. And because it's so interactive, I have anticipated that we should go to 1:30 and the like, but please communicate with me about timing, if more time for conversation and etc. So I want to make sure that it's suitable and you guys are getting what you need. So please communicate with me in the chat, etc. About how it's all going, and we can adjust accordingly. And that's really, I had to say for housekeeping as well. Let me know if you guys want more time for conversation in breakout rooms and in our large group conversations when we come back. So we can just ensure, we can be flexible with the way that I've kind of tweaked it and set it up so that we can get everything we need to get done, and that you'll get to go home with all the learning objectives and tools with you if there's something we can't get to here today in our large group. And we are going to jump into our learning objectives now. So yeah, our basic goal, right, is to increase our understanding of what makes an adult askable. And these are our four area of building skills, again, of how our agenda is kind of built into. So building trust and affirming relationships, committing to consistent connections, committing to caring communication, and how to be a curious co-pilot. And then kind of my favorite kind of aspect of our agenda and how this is all set up is that towards the end, we'll make a personal commitment to be more askable to youth in our lives. And we'll be making kind of a personal commitment to our own learning about how we'll be doing that. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that we have time for that for sure. So this first minute. Okay. So this is a word cloud from the survey. So the youth surveyed were said that their askable adult is, and this is what came up. So a word cloud, as you may be familiar, the bigger words are the words that came up the most. So these were some of their answers for askable adults. So I asked, you can write in the chat or raise your hand or just feel free to come up to you. Do any of these words surprise you or inspire you as far as when you say who their askable adult is? What you see on the screen.
For me, I was reading through them and I think a lot of them made a lot of sense. And then I saw at the top where it says nobody, and that also makes a lot of sense, but it's sad and it makes sense with the mentoring movement and everything, but that's something that stood out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Amy says, nice to see a variety of kind of family members.
I'm kind of surprised by dogs. Yeah.
Also, sister's boyfriend. That's kind of strange, but not.
Yeah, it's still adjacent to the family, but like somebody who's still like a little bit removed, which maybe helps with the level of comfort almost.
Yeah, it's just like you said. The title is unsurprising because it's all about someone that a person can trust. I think that's the biggest thing to be like askable adults, having the trust with, yourself and the student.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by teacher, because I always said as a former teacher that I probably spent as much time around students, a child, as they spent around their parents, if not more sometimes. I looked at it as 6 hours a day times 5, that's like 30 hours a week. So I'm not surprised by the teacher piece.
Yeah. Yeah, teacher and counselor are really big, just about as big as friends, right?
I'm looking at it and I see there's a lot of family members, uncle, brother, aunt, dad, mom. And I think that speaks for me to the importance of continuing to provide families with everything they need, to be their own child's askable adult. But I also see in the thing that lawyer, and that speaks to me, meaning maybe system involved youth.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And that for those system involved youth, that those people, those other adults who are involved, take their roles seriously, right? And that it's beyond just a professional relationship, right? It can even be personal in a way. Okay, thank you. All right. So our next word cloud, I'm gonna give you a minute because there's quite a lot here. So when youth were asked to describe their askable adult, these were some of their descriptors that they gave for their askable adults. So for the people on the previous page, this is how they described them. Do any of these words surprise or inspire you?
I see doesn't ask questions, and I can see from a child's perspective why that might be, is because most of the adults that are asking questions in their lives might be asking them to discipline or to be judgmental. So it, again, kind of like someone said earlier, it makes me sad to see that, but I also understand it. And I think if they had a trustworthy or a helpful adult that asked the right questions, they would maybe be more open to that. But that's an interesting one I wouldn't have expected to see on here.
Right. maybe it's even like not necessarily about not asking questions, but listening first. Because even a good listener is small, but it's like maybe more of the frustration of being like, talk less, ask questions less.
The words "not a snitch" are pretty interesting to see. Depending on who you are and what that person is to you and your situation, I guess.
I was going to say that one too, because I think things that I notice about a lot of these are just that it goes back to just being there and listening, but not necessarily taking any action. And some do say help and things like that, but I think a lot of it is just about somebody being there to listen and not do something necessarily based on what they hear.
We'll come back to a lot of those things later. And I went to a very interesting training last week, which actually, maybe in the follow-up, I'll send a link to the recording, but it was about Gen Z and, well, it was just about Gen Z, right? And how they like to receive help, basically. And a lot of it was like that when they ask for advice and the like, that they really want to find the answers to their own problems on their own. And even when they do go to ask for help, they really want to, find the answers on their own and not necessarily be told in a way. So yeah, no, that's interesting to kind of see that here now. So Claire wrote in the chat, I like the know stuff. It's pretty interesting because I assume that they mean knows stuff, give good advice or knows what to say. That could also be that their knowledge in a certain thing at the time, right? Someone who knows more than they do. Kind, nice, trustworthy is the biggest one. Is that surprising or no? I think similar, not far from not a snitch is won't tell is in even bigger letters. So there's this concern about privacy and confidentiality and trustworthiness, right? Trustworthy, trustable, respects privacy, won't tell, right? Trust you. There's this concern about, information and confidential. Oh, confidential is there. Now I'm saying there's this concern about trust. Very, very big concern. Right. So how do we build that when we're trying to be askable? And in certain situations with adults, and we'll talk about this later. Is that possible? Are there confidential relationships that we can have with young people? Sometimes no. Yeah. Trust me. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Trust goes both ways, right? Do we trust the adult? Does the adult trust me too? Yeah. Okay. So this last one we're going to look at. Yeah. Okay. So this last one was the question, right? The adult trusts them to do the right thing, right? Without having to be told what to do, that same thing, right? All right. So this last one is what they'd like to be able to talk to their Askable adult about. So if they have their Askable adult, this is what they'd like to be able to talk to them about. Do any of these words surprise you or not surprise you? How big the word nothing is. Nothing and anything.
I'm surprised by teeth. I'm wondering why T is there. That's interesting.
Which one, Latika?
TEA. They don't want to talk about T. They do want to talk about T.
Yeah, right. And I wonder too, when they say nothing, is it that, are they implying they don't want to talk, or they want the ability to literally just like talk about nothing, right? Just have a conversation, you know? In that same way that like nothing can mean like, I want to be able to talk about anything, you know? And talk about nothing, talk about anything.
I noticed that, when I'm in mentoring programs I've been a part of, the focus a lot of times can be really heavy on college access and what's going on at school. And those things are a very small percentage of the things that youth say they want to talk about on this page.
So I'm sorry, Rachel, what is a small percentage that they want to talk about?
College and
Oh, college is very small.
academics and school, because that tends to be what we as the adult mentors focus on when we're in a mentoring role, but often youth want to talk about so much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah, just I thrown something in the chat, but I love that there are a couple of just more mundane things on here, like sport and car advice and money problems. Like I know one of the things that my kids love to talk about is just life things, like I'm going to be an adult soon. How do I do that? Like, they're not necessarily getting those things, those practical life skills in school.
Yeah.
And legal issues on it, like how do I navigate, it could be something more serious, like if they're system involved youth, but it could also be like what I hear about people having a lawyer. What does that mean? Like what do I who do I contract to do work?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these bigger words, they're kind of broad, right? Life, nothing, anything, problems. Huge. I mean, that covers everything, right? Bullying, drugs, huge. Life-altering things, school, personal things, relationships, emotions, family problems, abuse, alcohol, sexuality. Huge run of the gambit. And that if these young people had adults who were askable and hopefully prepared to have these conversations, could go a very long way. Interesting. I have a friend who is a sexual health educator for young people. She's amazing. And actually, I have her contact information. Actually, I'll send it in the follow-up. But it says sex health, what actually happens. And I think that's so interesting because, right, what actually happened? I think she's been doing, I'll send her Instagram profile actually too, because she's been doing these polls for targeted towards people my age, millennials, about like what information do you wish you actually had during puberty, and so much of it is like, right, like sexual health, what actually happens, because you don't get the information, right? What actually happens, right? What actually happened with drugs, bullying, school, all these things, right? I think that's really interesting that young people are looking for the real information, who they can really ask and who's really prepared to answer. I think that's it too, right? It's not just that we want to be askable, that we're also prepared for those conversations. And we'll talk a bit more about that too. Okay, great conversation, guys. Thank you so much. Awesome. Lauren says, dogs jumped out because youth also have people talk to about their passions and interests. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So next, we are going to break out into rooms to talk about this. So I believe I'm going to have the abilities to broadcast this into your rooms. So if you are in an odd room, you are going to spend time on this first block. So you're going to spend 5 minutes on your own. So the first 5 minutes, you'll spend time doing independent work. And actually, we will go into rooms first. So your first 5 minutes in the room, you'll spend time on your own. You can either write, you can just spend time thinking. If you want to draw because you don't like to write, fine. So if you're in an odd room, you're going to spend time thinking, when you were younger, did you have an askable adult? Who was your askable adult? What made them askable for you? What did you talk to them about? And if you didn't have an askable adult, what would have been helpful? How else did you find support? If you are in an even numbered room, spend your first 5 minutes writing, thinking, drawing. Young people who you know, the young people maybe you work with, or young people in your life, who are their askable adults. What do you think makes adults askable for them? What do they do and talk about together? If you don't have askable adults, where do you think they're finding support? After those first 5 minutes, when you're working on your own, spend the next 5 minutes in those rooms, share out, and then we'll come back together and we'll share out as a large group. Does that make sense? Is those instructions clear? So first 5 minutes, you'll be working on your own. Next 5 minutes in your groups, you'll be talking out, and then we'll come back together and we'll share. All good? Give me a sign. Okay, cool. I'm going to pause recording. Welcome back. Hope you all had some fruitful conversations. Yeah, for those of you who were discussing our blue side, number 1, what were your experiences when you were younger as far as askable adults? You want to share out in the chat or feel free to come off mute.
I said I didn't really have an askable adult when I was growing up. There were adults that I trusted that looked after me after school or on the weekends if my parents were busy, but no one that I really felt comfortable to talk to about, I don't know, issues that I had with friends or in school, or when we got to like the puberty age, talking about sex and relationships. I didn't really have that. I had older cousins who might have been like on the cusp of adulthood at that time, but still very much growing up themselves. And we didn't get a chance to go into it as a huge group. Not all of us touched upon it, but one person did. What would have made the difference? I think it's a generational issue. So I'm a millennial. I'll be 30 in March. And my parents had me probably in like their 30s. So do the math. But I think those things weren't talked about with their parents. Like they didn't feel comfortable. And I'm talking a specific experience, but I think it could be blanketed to an extent. But they were told that those topics were taboo and that they probably didn't talk about them growing up. So they extended kind of the same policies to raising me. And I blanket it because I know like their siblings, my friends' parents, we've talked about this as like a collective. So I think that's where the disconnect was. Obviously, you can't go back and change that, and it's hard to change going forward. But I definitely think that was probably the reason why, is because my parents never made it seem like they wanted to listen to that stuff. And I loved growing up. I had a great childhood. I really don't have a lot of complaints, but if it wasn't on their radar, it certainly wasn't going to be on mine. So I just felt like it wasn't a thing to be talked about. And now I obviously realize that's not the way to do things with kids.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, but you don't know, you don't know. You don't know what you're missing out on if you don't know about it, right? Yeah. Yeah, anyone else who was discussing other questions for number 1 want to share?
We did talk a little bit about what can fill in if there isn't an askable adult, and that became things like youth group or teachers, cousins. So that seemed to be a theme in our group.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great point. We saw friends on those earlier word clouds, right? So
yeah,
friends,
and a best friend made a big difference, and peers, even though they weren't adults.
Right. Yeah. I mean, right, doesn't mean you're not talking to anyone. Somebody, you're asking someone, just maybe not an adult. No, great point. All right, no, thank you for sharing. I mean, I know for me, definitely not. There's definitely not an askable adult for sure. All right, so for our even number of groups, for the young people that you know now, what are you observing to be their experiences? Feel free to come off mute, drop in the chat.
I can kick us off. So we mostly were in the mentoring sphere. So we talked about how a lot of our youth don't have those Askable adults, and those Askable adults are their mentors. Also, sometimes it could be teachers, it could be friends, like we mentioned. And we think what makes the adults Askable is a lot of it is the trust. Even if you are a mandated reporter, telling them that type of thing and just building that trust over time, because it doesn't come immediately. And sometimes it really does take time to get somebody's trust, depending on the kid. And I think we kind of talked about how, what do they do and talk about together? Everything and nothing. I think those deep conversations definitely come over time, and they appreciate being able to ask about sensitive topics. But they also appreciate just being able to have silence too. And I don't know if anybody from the group has anything to add, but yeah.
No, great point. Great points, Hannah. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to share? I mean, right. Mentors is us trying to, for mentoring programs, we're trying to structure in those Askable adults and fill those gaps. But when we know that those Askable adults may not naturally be occurring. People are appreciating your summary. Coaches, friends, yeah, sometimes a removed family member might feel more comfortable, depending on the family dynamic and things and the like. No, great point. Awesome. All right, thank you all. You sense authenticity in adults, and if they feel safe and trust you, they will share. Yes, yes, that's going to come up for sure. Wonderful. Okay. So our first kind of bucket of our 4 tools for becoming an Askable adult is building trusting and affirming relationships. So again, these kind of our tips for our building trusting and affirming relationships before we get to our activity. Respect, right? It starts there. Youth feeling respected in these relationships is central to having effective relationships with adults. It goes both ways. We know that if a youth is not feeling respected, it's not going to work out. And if youth hold respect as a core value, and they will work hard to maintain it in a relationship. And we know that historically, adults hold it as a core value as well. And it can mean different things generationally, but that on both ends, we need to work hard to maintain it, to maintain relationships with our young people. Confidentiality, we saw it come up in that word cloud many, many times. Obviously, it's very, very important to them. So if you are not able to do that up front to keep things confidential, then we need to be very clear about that, about when you're able to keep something confidential and when you're not. For those of you in mentoring programs, we know that, and very often for mentors, if you're training mentors, about what things are allowed to be confidential and what things are not, right? And that typically mentors really can't serve as secret keepers, because they need to be communicating with you if you supervise mentors and the like. So if you are someone who trains mentors, this would be a big training area about confidentiality, secrets, and the like, about what that is, because confidentiality is so important to young people. So again, the Askable Adult campaign isn't just written towards mentors, and because confidentiality is so important to young people, if you are working with mentors, this is such a big training area, because this is such an important value for young people. They're going to test that boundary with their mentor, and if a mentor is not prepared, it can very quickly rub a young person the wrong way, or they may feel betrayed. Again, if that's not broached and communicated clearly. If it is, and that honesty is there, then again, it's understood and the trust is there. If they're saying, hey, It's actually the rules and the protocols here is that when you talk to me about this kind of thing, I have to tell this person or etc. And it is communicated accordingly. But again, with confidentiality, it just needs to be very clear. For adults in our relationships with young people, we need to check our own agenda, right? We have agendas. Mentoring programs have agendas. Parents have agendas for our young people. Us well-intended adults, we can get lost in our own agendas. For mentoring programs, right, we have agendas that are set upon us by our grantors, by the outcomes of our programs, by the goals that we are trying to reach, by our missions and visions, right? And that's hard because the real outcomes that we all just want to be is just for happy kids and successful kids and young people. And that's tough. And this is why when we talk about youth-centered programming and youth voice and programming, that is so youth are aware and have youth voice in how programs are structured, and that they're not a tool of our programs, and that they are not just, again, being used by our programs to reach outcomes, but that they have say in their participation in their role in reaching outcomes. And again, not just a tool of our agenda, but they make the agenda, right? Allowing space is really, really important, right? Remember, young people are in the process of identifying their identities and their values. So when we say allowing space, we're saying believe youth when they tell you who they are, and that is dynamic and will change over time. And that can be very hard for parents who are in relationship with youth for a very long time, and believe they know, right? So if you are a program, who is dealing with a parent who is having a struggle with a young person who is, their identity is changing and the like, this may be something that you can help coach a parent through. Sharing power. We do a whole training about sharing power, right? But remember that when you are an adult and you're in a relationship with a young person, you naturally have more power than that young person. Society does not grant young people the same power that it does adults. So there's always a power dynamic there. So we always, as adults, have more credibility and authority more authority than our young people. So we need to watch our assumptions and be aware of how that affects our young people. And we need to make it an intentional practice to share our power with our young people. We need to pause and reflect and let go of our judgment. If we see ourselves reacting to something that our young people say, know that that is us in our judgment. Our young people are living in a world that is different than the world that we went through when we were their age. So take a moment, reflect, and see what lens we're taking in their experiences and the words that they say and the actions that they do, and try to let go of that judgment. And if we're having a strong feeling, it's most likely about us and less likely about them. And then, as many of us who have worked with young people for a long time, keep your promises and do your best to show up. Being consistent is really important. So here I want to now drop in the chat the tool about building, trusting, and affirming relationships with young people. So you have that as we jump into our next activity. That should be showing up in the chat. Okay. I'm going to open up those same breakout rooms just for a few minutes, just like 5 minutes. And we're going to just have a quick conversation again. So considering what we just talked about, and you'll have this tool in the chat, which has those tips that I just went over. Think about something that you can do among those tips that can increase your askability. It might be kind of easy, and then something that is kind of a stretch. It might be a little bit harder for you to do to make you more askable. So we'll just do a few minutes. We'll come back at 1:03, and let me break our own for close right after 5 minutes. I'll let you do that. So if anybody'd like to share as far as it comes to building trusting and affirming relationships, what are some of the things that we can do to increase our askability? What might be easy to do? What might be a little bit more of a stretch to do?
I could start. Hannah and I were in a room together, and I think we mostly focused on number one. Sorry, you're gonna hear my dog clacking around in the background. But one thing that she said that really clicked with me is I think we both kind of identified that we view ourselves as adults who are typically, buddy, stop. Sorry. As adults who are typically pretty askable. And for me, that always translates into me focusing on the things I'm doing right with the kids I really connect with, but kind of to the detriment of focusing on the ways that I can be better for the kids I don't naturally click with. And so one thing that Hannah, another thing that Hannah pointed out that I think that I thought really resonated was, a lot of my, I was a shy kid, right? And so a lot of my own work, and I think this dovetails with what you were saying about, I grew up in a different world or different social context than a lot of the kids that I work with now. And so a lot of my own personal work has been, how can I be more brave in very specific social ways, or how can I come out of my shell? And, how can I, so I've thought about that, and like, how can I get kids to come out of whatever sort of small sphere they might be in and engage in ways that I think is more socially appropriate, but might not be comfortable for them. So so we kind of got to this point where it's like, well, it's not even so much that we want them to come out of their shell. We want to find better ways to get us invited into their shell, because maybe the most appropriate and the best thing for us to do is to kind of go into that little sphere with them and just engage more directly there where they feel safer, instead of getting them to take those risks. They might not be ready to do that, or that might not be what works for them. So really, I think that's kind of where we kind of hovered around, but really thinking about ways to get them to invite us in and feel safe with us as a presence there, is maybe one of the things we could do to increase that askability.
Great. No, I love that. And yeah, kind of the patience in doing that too, because it's less on, right, it requires something of them too, and less on what you can do too, right? Right, meeting them where they are. Great, Carnell. Great, thank you so much.
Go
ahead.
I'm sorry, is it?
Go ahead.
So in my group, we discussed the fact that a lot of times mentors just want to immediately go into problem solving mode when they're told something. And someone said this nice technique about, instead of going immediately to that, start with the first follow-up being, tell me more, to show that you really care.
Yeah, totally right. Pause. Which can be difficult because we often feel that we have the experience to help, or that we can make the situation so much easier. And we heard earlier that in those word clouds, right, that's not necessarily what they're looking for. And that's harder to do. And what we just heard too, right? Like let young people tell you who they are, what they are, what's happening to them. Young people also, and everyone is the expert of their own life, right? They're the ones living it. So let them tell you, and be patient enough to listen and do that listening. Great. Thanks so much, y'all. Great. Okay. So now jumping into committing to consistent connection. So, and this goes a lot into what, when I used to train mentors directly, when I was a mentor coordinator, consistency is so important to the foundation of relationships. So this is hard for me to speak about anything other than mentors, but consistency is very important. The foundation of relationships, especially with young people. So being consistent, predictable, dependable, and safe is really important into the foundational relationships with young people. Relationships with young people have predictable stages, right? Young people are going to be checking it out for safety in the beginning, right? Once they're there and know that, this relationship is going to be safe, this person is going to show up regularly. When they show up, they're going to be the same person every time they show, right? They're going to act the same. They're not going to show up in a way, they're not going to abandon me. They're not going to show up in a way that is unpredictable each time, like I don't know who they are. They're going to be consistent, right? So they're checking it out for safety. Once I know that this person is consistent, I'm the young person, then I'm going to be testing limits, right? So, I'm getting to know this person. I like them enough. They're showing up, but then the young person's testing limits, right? Because young people need boundaries and structure. So then they're testing the limits. Of course, those who have trained mentors, then we're teaching mentors about boundaries and how to set up boundaries. And anybody's in a relationship with young people, we have to have boundaries and test limits, right? And then once we're getting past that, and the last step of relationship is we're talking about genuineness, that authenticity that you guys referred to earlier. Young people sniff out authenticity or the lack of authenticity quickly, and they're just, they're not into the lack of it, right? They know when you're genuine and when you're being ingenuine, and they just don't have time for a lack of a lack of authenticity. They need that genuineness. So they want, when we're talking about that commitment to consistent connections, we're talking about paying attention, giving them our attention when we're with them, putting our phones away, making that eye contact, being with them, and really being with them and giving our attention. And we're also saying that when we are talking about youth who have a hard time giving their attention to anything sometimes, but that's not for us to take personally. That's developmentally appropriate for a young person, but we're the adults. So we can give our young people our attention because we're adults. That's what we're supposed to do. It's okay for a young person to be distracted and the like. That's normal. We're adults. We can put our phones away and give our young people the attention that they deserve because they're looking for that. And as we saw from their surveyed youth that we were looking at, they're looking for us to give us our attention, give them our attention, to listen, to give them eye contact, and to show up for them. Follow up with them even when you're not around, right? So if you have the opportunity to call them, to text them, to keep up with them, if you know something important is happening and you can't be there, how can you follow up with them and make it known that you're thinking about them and that you still care about them, right? Make time for lightness, right? If you're in a relationship with a young person, and especially for more structured programs that have specific goals, we're talking about college and career readiness programs, is there still time for us to laugh, for us to have fun, for us to play, to have humor and lightness in our relationship, even if we have more serious things going on or serious goals that we have to work towards? Help youth navigate stress. Life is stressful. So how can we help youth, identify stress and identify coping mechanisms, positive coping mechanisms, right? We know what negative coping mechanisms are. Negative coping mechanisms are things like doing drugs, drinking alcohol, dangerous activities and things like that. Positive coping mechanisms, things like playing sports, exercise, hanging out with my mentor, going to school program, things like that. So teaching youth positive coping skills and how to navigate stress, even when we as adults may not always be best about that. Do these things alongside your youth and learn together can be really important. And then find satisfaction in doing things for them and with them, right? And let your youth know that you're enjoying your time with them. These things kind of go along with paying attention, right? And shift your levels of support with them, right? When they are doing great, you can pull back a bit and let them shine and do great. let them know that you care and you're doing wonderful, but you don't need to be all up in your business, all up in their business either, right? Like, let them know that they're doing great, they're doing wonderful, and they can do it on their own too, right? And you can give them your support from a little bit of a distance. They can soar on their own. And when they need more support, then you give them, you step in and you give them more of their support and let them know that you are there and they can call on you and the like. So again, that you are consistent with them, and that they can always reach out to you. Again, that commitment to being consistent. All right, so now I'm going to drop in the chat our commitment to consistent connections tool. I'm not sure we have exactly time for this activity, but I want to kind of talk through it. And see what you guys kind of feel about how these things go. So actually, I'm going to launch a poll, and I want to ask you guys about how, oh no, I'm logged in from another device. Michael Molly, are you able to launch the poll from your computer, from your Zoom?
Yes,
Can you launch it?
I did. Is it the who is here today poll or a different poll?
The other one.
Okay, let's see. Yes, okay. It is launched.
Can everyone see the poll?
Yes.
Okay, so the poll is about, so if we had more time, which unfortunately we don't, is about common topics that adults lecture young people about. So we were going to go into a role play with the instructions here to decide which one we would act out in the role play. But since we're a little bit short on time, I want to see which do you think is the most common these days that young people get lectured about. So vote for that in the poll real quick. And then Michael Mall, when you see them, like that almost everyone's done the poll, end the poll and launch the results, because importantly, I can't see it. So vote for what you think young people get the most lectured about nowadays. You're on mute, Michael Mall.
I would like to wait a little longer to see if we get a few more responses in.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, so pick your answer for what you think nowadays young people get lectured about the most of the topics shared. And then once you end it, Michael Molly, you have to end poll and then also share the results, which is an extra click. But then also tell me, because I can't see.
Oh yes, they should be shared now.
Okay. And what does it say?
8 out of 14, 57% said limiting social media time. 0% said wearing a seatbelt. 21% said cell phone use while driving. And 21% also said skipping school.
Okay, so this activity was to compare the experience of an adult trying to give a lot of information, lecturing essentially about the topic versus them only getting a limited amount of time in a conversation with the youth to get their point across about limiting social media time. So, and I ask, has anyone here tried to have this conversation with young people in the room, what young people have to say about it? And in this kind of askable adult way, how would you try to, with what we know so far in the training, get this conversation started without the too much, the too much talking and the more listening with what we've talked about so far? But honestly, I kind of want to make this a homework assignment and you take this to kids and ask your kids about this, because I actually want to hear what kids have to say about this. So maybe I'll leave that to you all. We're going to move forward. I want to ask real kids about this. We'll be back. We will be back. Okay. Can someone read the quote on the screen?
I can read the quote if you can hear me.
Yes.
Kids talk when we give them our full, curious attention. In order to truly hear them and discern the right-sized response in the moment, we need to tune into their channel. Like on an old-fashioned radio dial, we have to hone in on just the right spot to tune out the static of our fears, worries, and distractions so we can get the message. Are they just venting or asking for help developing a plan? The best way to do that is to look inside and get to know the static that comes up for us. I often think the best thing we can do to show up for our kids is tend to ourselves, seeking support from friends, colleagues, or professionals, especially when we have a hard time removing the static on our own.
Thank you. So we're moving into this topic of the curious co-pilot, right? So, and this is a conversation about, pardon me, right, how do we remain curious in the conversations that we have with young people about, how do we stay honest with them, and how do we communicate with them when we don't necessarily know what to say? How do we, oh my gosh, pardon me. Actually, hold on, I'm going to move one slide ahead and we'll come back. Okay, so when we talk about being a curious co-pilot, we want to be clear that when we are communicating with young people, that we don't, well, remember on that first slide where it said youth want to assume that there was that line where it said that that the adult knows something, that they know more, that they have knowledge. Right, we want to hope that youth come to ask us things because they think we know something, but we want to make it clear that adults don't know everything, and that's okay. And that also, though, that we are honest and that we're still able to provide helpful information. And that not only are we honest, that we're also direct, and that if we don't know what to say, that we're direct about that. And that if we don't know what to say, that we're also willing to explore, right? That we're still askable, and that we don't just shut down and the conversation's over if we don't know what to say or if we don't have the information to answer a question, right? That we're open to collaborating with the young person to find the information. Someone mentioned earlier about, the silent, the quiet parts of conversation, right? And just listening and asking questions to help the young person to continue forward, to let them tell you more about the situation, right? And that can be a way for the young person to find the answer in the conversation. So that is often a way for young people to solve their own problems, to really break down their own situation into smaller and more digestible pieces, and help them find their own solution. So instead of you trying to solve the problem, which you might want to do from your own wanting to help, ask curious questions. So instead of how could you do something differently, rather than telling them what you would do, because again, you can't do anything. You're not them, right? They're going to be the one in this situation. So being a sounding board and asking questions to encourage their own self-discovery, because again, youth may have the answer to help themselves. Another thing may be if you know if it's a situation where they need external information, maybe you know the person who has the information, right? This could be a situation where you're able to broaden their network of relationships through your own network of your relationships. And that can be a tool for the young person to learn how to network and find people, and to learn how to broaden their own relationships, their own network of relationships, which is really important. Social capital is a really, really important thing to increase positive outcomes for young people. And is just like a skill and an indicator that we know nowadays is really important for young people. So keeping that in mind, that you are a key to could be a key to a whole network of people for young people. So keeping that in mind. And when we're talking, referring back to what I said earlier about collaborating to find information, looking at those resources together. When we say Google it, teaching young people to Google it, and how to source information from the internet. It's not actually that easy. How to source and avoid disinformation and misinformation from the internet. Actually not easy. Informational literacy and things like that is not easy to do. How to use the library, things like that, research, all those things are practical skills that could be something that you spend time with your young person doing, so they can find this information for when you're not there to help them do it. So that's like kind of the practical side of that for when, if there are situations where you don't have that information. So that might be the practical side for what might start as, askable questions for which you don't have answers. And that could, again, going back to, meaningful conversations, and that start from being askable, right? That could lead to all these opportunities from when you're able to be askable and have those relationships with young people. So it really is just once you're askable, you have all these opportunities with young people to expose them to be able to be capable to solve their own problems and have the ability to be empowered to to grow and move forward, which is really exciting. I want to get to this last bit, so pardon me. We're going to move back to our last that last word cloud. So these were the topics that they wanted to ask adults about, right? So what is one topic? Remember, these are the topics that they want to talk to adults about, and therefore we know that these topics are important to young people. So of these topics that you see, what is one that you would like to learn more about, so that you, should a youth come to you to ask about it, you would now be more informed about it. And if and when you learn more about it, what's a resource that can help you learn more about it? So take a look at the screen. Let us know in the chat or come off mute which one you're going to spend some time learning more, you're going to make a commitment to learn more about it, and what resource you might use or look up to learn more about it. Latika, gender dysphoria, great. And actually, do let me know what you drop in the chat, and I'll try to share out some resources too in my follow-up. But yeah, let me know what you would like to learn more about. Hannah, money problems. Great. Yeah. Awesome. Right. Thank you all. Keep thinking about that. What you'd like to make a commitment to be more prepared the next time you are askable, because again, it's great to be askable. And now we want to hopefully have the information once a young person is in conversation with us, because that's the next step. So again, thank you for joining us today. Thanks to the Askable Adult campaign of Vermont for lending us the materials. And I also want to thank the Y in Central Maryland for being a partial sponsor of this training series today. I want to also invite you to our Maryland United for Youth Conference, which is just about a month away. Tickets are on sale now at bit.ly/MD4Y2022 or just 22. It's very exciting. It's gonna be at the Crown Plaza in Annapolis, which is super nice. It's gonna be really, really fun. Please join us. It's gonna be so fun. It's programs all over. Maryland's gonna be there. I was one of the on the jury to review our speakers and workshop facilitators. It's going to be really good. So I really encourage you to join us. It's going to be a really good time. And tickets are on sale. Yeah, if you, I don't know, need to argue with your boss about why you should go, email me and I'll make your boss let you go. Like, you should be there. Somebody from your organization should be there. It's going to be really good. So please join us. And then if you not already aware, our virtual recruitment fair for the greater Maryland region anyway is in 10 days, in a few weeks. If somebody you know is looking to be a mentor, please join us and feel free to share this out on social media, bit.ly MDDC virtual fair, also in partnership with the Y in Central Maryland. So anybody in the greater Maryland region looking to be a mentor, we have some great programs who are looking for people to mentor. So thank you all for joining me. When you come off this call, it's going to direct you to the Vermont Network's survey about the training. So please fill that out for them, who are collecting data about everyone who implements their training. And then when I follow up with the resources, I'll send you the survey for the Mentor Maryland DC survey evaluation. But please fill that information out for the Vermont Network. They will appreciate it. About their Askable Adult campaign. And I will make sure you get all the Askable Adult stuff and the extra stuff, because there's actually even more that I wasn't able to include. Yeah, I hope you're able to use the materials at your program, and maybe we'll do this again sometime in an extended version where we'll be able to do even more. So thank you guys so much for coming, and have a great weekend. Thanks, y'all.